began to care more about life. I cared more about freedom. I cared more about justice. I cared more about unity. I cared more about myself, and I cared more about my neighbor, regardless of what made us different. Because I learned about his life, I began to believe that I too can become a king, a righteous king, a true servant to the people. His assassin thought he murdered Dr. King. He thought he murdered his fight. He thought he murdered his light. He thought he murdered the movement. But we're proving him wrong today. All of us. And let us continue to prove him wrong every day. When I was younger, my mother used to read this book called The Adventures of Curious George. Anybody familiar with Curious George? All right, listen. I'm going to try my best to shorten this story up. She read this to me a whole lot, and you know, it was always him getting into something, and you know, he messes up something apparently, but then in the end of the story, somehow, some way he saved the day, and yay, Curious George, be a good little monkey, right? So, my mother used to read that. That was like one of our rituals. She read a couple books to me. She read the Bible and she read Curious George. That's what I used to read, all right, when I was younger. So I have 2 children now, and I have a 13-year-old son and I have a 7-year-old daughter, and they both love reading. Like, that's their thing. And one of the special moments I have with my daughter is our reading time. And so I was down at a store, and I see this book, and it said The Complete Collection of the Adventures of Curious George. And I said, oh my goodness, I have to buy this, you know, because I'm now going to have the experience of sitting down with my daughter and reading Curious George to her. So this is beautiful. This is a great thing, right? This is beautiful. I buy the book. I go home. We do our little ritual. We get them washing her up. We go to our little reading corner. I sit down. She runs. She sits down. I say, look, it's Curious George. Now there's a Curious George cartoon. So she loves the Curious George cartoon, right? So I open the book. First page. Guess what it said?
Oh, God.
It said, this is George. George is from Africa. I said, oh, wait, George is from Africa? I never thought about this. Why is that significant? I'll keep going. Turn the page, right? Here comes the man with the yellow hat. Y'all know the man with the yellow hat. Always wear the yellow hat, the little yellow outfit. I said, why does he always dress this way? What is that? Well, in this picture, he has a stick. And he's like walking up, and it's him and this other dude, and they see George in the tree. I said, oh, the man with the yellow hat is an explorer. This is crazy, right? He sees George in the tree. He says, oh, that's a nice little monkey. I want that monkey, right? He takes his hat, lays it on the ground, right? George sees the hat, like, I wonder how that would look like on my head. So George comes down off the tree, tries to put the hat on. The hat's too big, falls over him. Man with the yellow hat snatches him up, puts him in a little rowboat, rows him to a big ship. What? George was kidnapped?
Messed up your whole childhood. Messed up your whole childhood.
Right. Now, this is why it's crazy to me. Now, my daughter wakes up every morning, watches Curious George, right? And it's real nice. Well, you know why they told him how George and the man with the yellow hat met? They said that the man with the yellow hat went to a zoo and saw George in the zoo, and he looked sad, and so he saved him. That's what slave masters said that they did from us when they took us from Africa. They're saving us, and they're bringing us over here to civilize us. And they say this to George all the time, be a good little monkey. You know the first thing that George did when he got on the big ship? He looks up in the sky, and he sees some birds flying. And he's like, I wish I was able to fly. And he jumps on, he climbs up on the edge of the boat, and he jumps over. He jumps over. He jumps ship. That's the first thing he did when he got on the ship, because he's seeing these birds freely flying while he's on this boat. Oh, George was sad that they took him from Africa, but it says, but he still was a little curious. Now here's what I'm curious about, is that George was never curious about himself. He is curious about everybody else. There's not one episode or one page where George is introduced to his family, where he says, I wonder what another monkey looks like. He gets to know the zebras, the pigs, the horses, humans. Never interested in another monkey.